Charles, this is an excellent title that you've come up with for today's show. We're going to meet the dumb Fockers.
Well, I think it was always a joint collaboration. The art department was instrumental in sending this message out to the audience. I think before we get too much, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this both now and then later in the First Amendment Forum, we have to remember that the business of television is the business of selling bullshit to consumers. For example, I actually in my youth happened to enjoy Wonder Bread toasted sandwiches with Miracle Whip and Kraft slices of American cheese and iceberg lettuce, salt and pepper. That is, does it taste good when you're a kid? Yes. Is it good for you? Absolutely not. And those are all things that were sold effectively using television as the primary medium. It's tough to get people to buy Miracle Whip over the radio and certainly in print. So in essence, what we watched in that debate was a totally rigged exercise. It turns out that the person who sits, as they say in the Midwest and the Far West, over top of ABC News is a close personal friend of Kamala Harris from California. So, of course, this was, all right, we're going to rig this. There's some discussion on my Twitter feed about whether Kamala was wearing an earpiece or not. Did she get the questions in advance or not? But the shots were made to make her look good and Trump look bad. But the most telling thing that I circulated this by email to our close circle earlier today, forget about what you and I think, right? We're persuaded at this point that Trump and Vance are not only going to win, but if they don't win, the country goes down, as Archie Bunker would say, the toilet bowl. And on the other side, you've got the single cat ladies who are all in for this idiot Kamala Harris. What matters at this stage in the election going now through November 5th is the undecideds. And there were two stories I saw that confirmed what I thought happened. And both of them should really be quite alarming for the idiocracy in mainstream and for the punditry in mainstream. And those are that among undecideds, this was a story that appeared in the Times and I think on Reuters, that a poll of undecideds went 60 plus to 30 for Trump. After watching the debate, the undecideds, the people who entered this debate, watching it for the first time, thinking about not knowing who they want, they broke decisively for Trump. And that's something we saw elsewhere in another article. Another survey saw the same thing. So did Kamala Harris do better than I expected? Yes, she didn't vomit on her clothes. But did she convince anybody? Could anybody get up there? Could you get up there? Could I get up there and say, listen, I've been the vice president. I've been the person that Joe Biden consulted right before he made every major decision in administration. Every major thing that we've done sucks, from domestic to foreign policy. Everything we did is a suck fest. Vote for me, and I'll do even better for you when I become president for the next 4 years. I mean, it's an impossible lift. You just can't make that lift. And I think between now and November 5th, what Trump and his team are going to do is hammer home to these undecided voters, stoke up the people they need to get to the polls this time. Unlike 2020, when many people thought, Trump supporters thought, we don't need to vote. He's got this. You got to make sure the base is out there. You got to make sure that it's very tough to try to rig this in the end. But most importantly, you've got to hammer home those people who are living across rural America, for example. I used to live, admittedly, in an upscale portion, but sparsely populated towns about 80 to 100 miles north of New York City. It's in those towns where you do notice today these illegal immigrants. And in certain of them, these illegal immigrants are bunched. It's in those towns where you worry. You send your child on a school bus. What's going to happen along the road there? What is that school bus going to have to pick up? What's going to happen when the child leaves the school to get home? How safe are your children on these rural streets, roads, and parks in coming days and weeks? As these stories multiply, the approach of the mainstream to say that cats weren't eaten and geese weren't killed and pets aren't harmed, just to debunk it immediately in a coordinated fashion is so phony and so fake and so dangerous for the mainstream press, because now I believe there are more than 4,000 counties in America. And if you look at a county map of election results for 2020, for 2016, and elsewhere, what you see is that an overwhelming majority of counties voted for Trump. Overwhelming. And an overwhelming percentage of the problems with crime is going to be in these rural communities. So that's step one on safety. On the economy, we're only now beginning to see how powerful these AI tools are and other technological tools are, and how effective they are in reducing employment in the private sector. That's the real story in these jobs reports, that you're not creating full-time jobs anymore. You're creating part-time jobs. Most of these are going to illegal immigrants. That's a big problem because our population is growing in America, and you need to create good, high-paying, non-union, full-time jobs. And this administration is not doing it. Should she win, capital is going to flee out of the country. I understand today was a rocky day in the stock market. It went down for a while. I don't know if it closed up. People are very concerned. Investors are very concerned about the state of the economy now and what might happen under a Harris-Walz administration. Then you turn to foreign policy. The situation in Ukraine would not be where it is today had Donald Trump was down, you see, for much of the day, and then it closed up. It was down something like 750 points at one point. Now, maybe the fact that it's up is reflective of the hope that Kamala won't win and that Trump will win with a commanding majority in the House and the Senate, which is what I hope happens. But anyway, on foreign policy, we wouldn't be in this mess in Ukraine in the way that we are now, having spent the amount of money we've spent now, having destroyed that country, had Donald Trump been president. That's crystal clear. Children, and especially women in Afghanistan, would not be cowering in fear the way they now are and the way they're likely to be for decades, thanks to the atrocious way in which Kamala Harris and Joe Biden left Afghanistan without having the decency and the courtesy, not only to protect the Afghanis who are working with us and who now many of them may be dead or in jail, but to notify our alliance partners. I mean, I've seen credible reports that we just left. Our troops, our leadership left in the dead of night without telling our NATO alliance partners what we were doing. It's outrageous. And that is not on Trump. That is on Harris and Biden. And you could go on and on and on. So yes, was it an interesting television spectacle? I suppose. Did Kamala have some points? Yes, she did. Did Trump have other much better points, including the most important one? Why don't you go, if you care about the border problem, why don't you go wake up Joe Biden in the White House and tell him to do what we did? Because that worked under Trump. So I have the disability and the benefit of being more than 10,000 miles away from New York City now. So I get my news in ways that people in New York City cannot. I suppose maybe they could, but I don't listen to cable TV or mainstream TV. I only watch portions of the debate, but then I went and looked at summaries and this and that. I think Harris needed to deliver a knockout punch. She certainly did not do that. Her idea that she's going to create her economic plan and she's going to create business opportunities in rural areas. Precisely how are you going to do that? You know, you got a better way of, you're going to teach people how to crack eggs with one hand and set up a, one-handed egg bowl manufacturing company or something. I mean, give me one concrete thing that you're going to be able to encourage businesses to do in rural areas. You can't do that. So I think the true believers on both sides had their minds made up before the debate started. The undecideds are breaking for Trump already, and we still have 55 days left of mayhem coming, of daily reports of migrants raping and killing and mutilating pets and this and that, of businesses shutting down. The lumber liquidators just went bankrupt as one example. I never understood that store chain. It didn't make sense to me, but it's now bankruptcy, as are many other retail stores. You're better able, Jason, to tell me what things are like in New York City, but I'm guessing they're not better than they were on July 26th.
Certainly not.
And we have the college campi on fire with these anti-Israel protests, churning out woke, crazy loons at an absurd cost to their parents and to society. So the structural problems that were compounded under Harris and Biden are worse today than they were on January 20th, 2021. Just breaking news, the Department of Justice, that is to say the Biden Department of Justice, had to drop 50% of the obstruction cases against January 6th people just now, according to Just the News. So, that increasingly, with the timeline that was just put out, where Harris said, I was in the Capitol when this mayhem happened. No, she wasn't. It's crystal clear she wasn't. So she lied about that. Pelosi lied about January 6th. There weren't multiple police officers killed as a result of January 6th. Ashley Babbitt was the only person I believe who was killed that day. And that still is, she has never gotten justice for that. Her family has never. So I think as we look at points on the board, as we look at prices in the supermarket, as we look at layoffs, as we look at our children spouting gibberish coming out of these high-cost schools, as we look at foreign policy defeats, every day is going to be a referendum against the failed policies of Biden and Harris. And meanwhile, the Trump team is pretty adept on social media and has a lot of money. So I think, for me, I think it was, I put it as a win on the Trump train as it heads to a landslide, remembering that the Senate, the Democrats have to defend, I think it's 22, 23 seats, and the Republicans only 11 or so, right? So the Democrats have a heavy lift to keep control of the Senate. I think the Republicans are going to get the Senate, and it's possible, depending on how this shakes out, the turnout and the rest, that in a Trump landslide, there would be coattail effects, which would shift a lot of these races in the Senate. If Trump is able to get 52, 53, 55 seats in the Senate and increase the majority in the House, yes, he will face heavy resistance at key states like New York, places like New York City and state, Washington, D.C., and other places, but he is going to have a mandate if he keeps this up. And for once, we can have a reckoning. All these people who are standing up now to defend Biden Harris are the same people who are protecting Barack Obama, selling the bullshit that his 8 years was anything other than a disaster for America. And they're the ones protecting people who've been stealing using charities, which is the primary way to do it, and using fake book deals. I mean, Hillary Clinton has the gall today to have a tweet that I immediately pounced on, reminding people that she's got her 11th book coming out. Now, these books are, it's like reading the ingredient list for Kleenex. I mean, they're not compelling accounts of anything. It's old news cobbled together by most likely ghostwriters. And yet she gets 11 book deals. Probably each one of these book deals is at least $1 million. Right? That's grift. Crazy. Old-fashioned grift. Something lost, something gained. That's not, I know, it's something lost. I lost my mind and I gained some weight. I mean, it's just, it's just rubbish. And Bill's got one coming out 2 weeks after, after the election. He's got a book which supposedly it's called.
What is it called? What? Charles? Hey, Charles, hang on. We're losing it. Hang on.
Meaning the Clinton Foundation.
Wait,
that's
Charles.
We'll have to see how many. It's a Clinton Foundation. Yeah.
Charles, can you hear me? Charles?
I can hear you.
Okay, your internet just cut out there for a second. We lost a little bit. But hang on. Let me slow you down a second, because you're raising some incredible points that I want to just address for a moment, because one of the biggest issues, I think, was this Trump bringing up the eating of the pets and all that, because they've obviously jumped on it. And I was a little concerned, to be honest, that he did that, because I personally haven't yet been convinced by the evidence that I've seen. And I'm not saying that people are making it up, but it reeks of the type of story that idiot social engineer Democrats would plant to convince Trump to talk about it so that they could then say, oh, it's fake. So I just wanted to let you know that there is a 911 call. This is WABC News. This is New York radio, ABC News, saying that there is a 911 call that backs up the migrant geese claim. And I did hear the call. It sounds sincere. It doesn't seem like something a guy would do to just like make that up. But at the same time, geese aren't pets. However, there's two important points that make whether this story is true or not sort of irrelevant. And you brought up a really important one yesterday that I think deserves some time and attention, particularly considering, you're talking about Hillary and Bill. This is an article pretty recently from the New York Times saying that voodoo is part of us inside a religious Haitian soiree in Brooklyn. And this is going on and on, talking about how Haitian voodoo is, in fact, sacrificing animals and things like this. You had some insights into this. Is this something you want to discuss?
Sure. I mean, this is something that is commonplace if you look at it. And if we think about Haiti, I mean, the nerve of the Clintons, of all people, trying to make fun of reports of the damage caused by Haitians now inside America. I mean, the reason there are these migrant Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, and elsewhere is because Hillary and Bill Clinton and her family presided over the theft of about $13 billion that was allocated, in theory, on paper, to Haitian economic relief after the earthquake in 2010. Bill was claimed that he directed his, quote, foundation to raise money and send it down to Haiti. Then there was a joint thing created with the Bush Foundation that I think stole a bunch of money, or people around it stole a bunch of money. But the big theft was when nations got together and created something, the interim Haiti something committee that supposedly raised as much as $13 billion, and there's no sign of that money inside Haiti. So there's a major set of economic crimes that should have been policed. I mean, $13 billion is a lot more than anything Trump may have gotten involved with his foundations. And then you get to the subject of voodoo. How prevalent is it in Haiti? And it's quite prevalent, and it does involve animal sacrifice. So it's not shocking to me that there might be reports of animals disappearing and being mutilated or whatever in places where these Haitian migrant communities have now sprung up around America. It doesn't surprise me at all. And real journalists would have gotten into this in some depth. But instead, it's one of these gotcha moments. So Trump said this, and it's not precisely as he said. Well, we'll see. We'll just see the coming days and weeks how many animals disappear.
One more point. So, because J.D. Vance had an excellent response to that. What is that woman's name from CNN who looks like the Dracula Muppet? Caitlin Collins?
Caitlin Collins.
Yeah. So
she's somebody who... Caitlin Collins tried to pin me, she's one of the wolf pack that in 2018 tried to invent the story that I was the money behind Peter Smith.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
I spent time with her on the phone.
Wow, I didn't know that. That figures, though. Yeah, she's part of this whole lawfare and social engineering mess. But I tell you, I've got my reservations about J.D. Vance, primarily to do with his links to Palantir and Fourth Amendment stuff. But just strictly in terms of his intelligence and his ability to, conduct himself in an interview like that, I was very impressed, because she tried to corner him on this exact, animal ritual eating, whatever it is that's going on. And what Vance basically said was, look, at this point, it really doesn't matter if this is true or false. He said that he's heard rumors from people. He hasn't personally seen the evidence, so he's not convinced it's true. But even if it isn't, and this is just a meme, we're arguing about something that isn't the point. And the issue is we've got 20,000 migrants coming into this town of 60,000 people. There are a lot of videos on YouTube, Charles, from people in that town, and they are saying that even though they don't have a lot of video, he's like, hey, this isn't New York City where people are running around with video cameras on everything all the time. So a lot of people are telling him stories, but he said he couldn't personally say that he had seen it. What this guy had seen, because he runs an auto repair place. He said the number of crashes and accidents was just out of control because they have some program at the DMV where if you're a Haitian migrant, you just come with some piece of paper that proves your age. You don't need to take the driving test. You don't need to prove that you have a driver's license, and they give you some sort of 45-day permit that this guy who runs the car place and is registering license plates and things at the DMV all the time. He said he's never seen anything like this.
Well, let's remember, in Haiti, it doesn't come close to freezing. This is before we get into the season where you start to have black ice. I'm not being a racist there. Black ice is a condition where water, on the road, it can look to the uninitiated as if it's a stream of water, when in fact it's extremely slippery ice, where an experienced driver is going to lose complete control of the car. So you have a bunch of these people who've never been through a winter, and they're now about to enter a winter. As bad as it is now, it's going to get a lot worse. So another thing, just briefly to touch on, is this whole idea of crime statistics. Crime statistics, I believe, are manipulated. I know personally, and I think, Jason, you've been involved with this as well. You get to a situation, you could report a crime, but you realize if you do that, you got to sit down in a police station. You got to go through all this effort. Who knows what's going to happen? You might become the victim.
Yeah.
Right. So there is a natural reluctance to report crime, particularly crimes in undocumented or illegal communities, where the people who are afraid, if they're victims, they're afraid to go to the cops to say what happened, because they've got to admit they're there illegally. So to say that there aren't crime statistics is the kind of bullshit you would expect from a Caitlin Collins and her crew of media elites, because they manipulate statistics to begin with. That's definitely true with violent crimes. Trump had the point that the FBI statistics don't incorporate, and they're not consistent. They're like the old-fashioned way of multinationals in Japan used to account for their 400 or however many subsidiaries they had. You would just take 400 major cities in the United States, and if you want the crime statistics to drop, what you do is you put, in the earlier period, you put the cities like New York and Chicago, where there's high crime, in the early year, and in the more recent year, you take them out. And you wouldn't tell anybody that that's what you're doing, and that would show a drop in crime. And that's exactly what I think they're doing. We all know better. It cannot make sense. The very people who are talking about globalism, the merits of globalism, it cannot make sense for a country of 335 million people with tens of trillions of dollars of wealth to open its doors, open its borders to 7+ billion people, many of whom are living on $200 a year and live in fear for their lives in their home countries. It doesn't make any sense to
No, Eric Adams gave him $4,000. He's handing out credit cards like Halloween candy.
Of course, he's probably getting a taste on each card back through his crew somehow. And I also just saw, before we went on air, a story that said that apparently New York City is evicting 40,000 homeless people from homeless shelters.
No. That's the $4,000. They're giving them $4,000 credit cards to move out. It's that same woman, Molly Wausau Park.
Idiots.
And that is idiotic, because what's going to happen is you got someone who never has had any money, doesn't know how to manage $4,000. And by the way, $4,000 is enough money to buy basically nothing. And it's not like you're going to start your life with $4,000. Okay, we'll buy some food and rent a hotel for a week, and then we'll have a few $100 left and do what?
Well, $4,000
if you have kids and stuff, what are you going to do with that? It's like nothing.
But if 40,000 of these cards are handed out, and everyone who gets one has to remit, has to give $400 or $800 back to Eric Adams, it's not a bad deal for Eric Adams. So, it's insanity. What's going on here? That's the thing that
Bob found. Remember, Charles, we did that show with Bob about that microfinancing thing. That was the credit card scam there. They're just amping that up more. I haven't heard too much today about what the FBI is going to do to Eric Adams, but Charles, we are just about out of time here on YouTube. So why don't we continue, and all the others, why don't we continue our conversation in just 5 minutes in the First Amendment Forum? People are going to be able to join us there on odyssey.com/@crowdsource the truth. crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Thank you to all the sponsors. We'll be right back. Please stay